teach your kids how to whip. You better teach them slavery is still legit. Get in the house in that new whip. Cause that police gun, yes, that's the new whip.
It was just a regular day. And then my life flipped upside down. I just was coming from the store and about to start dinner, and then I got the knock at the door from the two little boys saying that the police just shot my son. I told the boys that you didn't know what you was talking about. My kids is at the park playing. No. I was living in this little condo right here at 2006. This was my house. I got the knock on the door, and I put my shoes and my coat on to walk over there. Of course, I seen police everywhere, and when I got closer, I seen my son laying on the ground. I just thank God that I had a video surveillance tape. They could have said anything. I still have trouble sleeping, but when I do go to sleep, at least I can sleep because I know what happened to my son.
A 12-year-old boy shot and killed over a weapon that turned out to be a toy. Cleveland police now confirm surveillance cameras captured what happened.
They just killed their brother.
And I'm steady yelling at them, telling them to let her out the car. She's only 14. Then they told me to calm down or they would put me in the back of the police car. They just messed up all around.
State-sanctioned violence takes place here on a regular basis.
Prosecutors say they have evidence it was Brelo who killed 43-year-old Timothy Russell and 30-year-old Melissa Williams.
Why did we have 13 officers involved shooting their weapons, firing 137 rounds? And I don't have answers for you right now.
Cleveland police officers fired 137 shots into that vehicle.
Families speaking out, blaming police for the death of Tanisha Anderson.
The family of 18-year-old Brandon Jones sent the city of Cleveland a notice of representation and a demand to preserve evidence.
Finally, the city of Cleveland realized that it had a problem, and the mayor asked the Department of Justice to please come in and investigate his own police department in the city of Cleveland and what the heck appears to be wrong with it.
We have determined that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Cleveland Division of Public Police engages in a pattern and practice of using excessive force.
No justice!
No Cleveland police officer has been found not guilty of voluntary manslaughter in the shooting deaths of 2 unarmed suspects.
The biggest flaw in American policing is that men or women who should not be armed law enforcement officers are never reined in by other officers. That blue wall of silence, they protect each other.
So they were doing their job.
When you talk about 2 of our officers, doing a justified shooting, they're talking about all of us.
Historically in this city, it appears anytime we have an interaction with the police, in each succeeding situation, basically you have no power, you have no rights, and you just have to comply or die.
It wasn't until the Tamir Rice case where everyone in the city kind of galvanized around this child. Enough was enough. And they just couldn't stand to see a 12-year-old child being gunned down in a park in front of his house by the police.
enough. Do I wait till I get cuffed or maybe I get struck? Keep my feelings tucked, tis it stays of blood. Tell me what it takes, mandates proceed to fail. At this rate we can excel, speeding toward the gates of hell.
It's been just over 3 weeks since you lost your son, and suddenly you find yourself in Washington in front of tens of thousands of supporters, black and white.
It was very overwhelming, but I'm blessed to have the world supporting me and the nation, and that's what's keeping me standing.
What is it you want to come from this, and what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking for justice for my son and a change for the nation, for nobody else's child have to go through this. If an apology was on the table for that, I would accept it with some actions and the people being held accountable for it.
We hope that the law is followed, and if it's followed, then what will come out of it will be a charge.
Less than a second, my son is gone, and I want to know how long I got to wait for justice.
Good morning. Today, I and 7 of the aforementioned individuals have filed just a few moments ago in municipal court a citizen's affidavit for probable cause in the death of Tamir Rice.
The Cleveland Name was created for the express purpose of making sure that the 2 officers who were responsible for the death of Tamir Rice were arrested and charged.
Locally and nationally, a diverse cross-section of people have been demanding and pleading and waiting for the criminal justice system to respond.
The municipal court judge said that there was enough evidence in the affidavit that would justify probable cause. He recommended to the current county prosecutor that yes, the officers should be arrested and charged, and they still hadn't been arrested. One of our recommendations to the Department of Justice in the city of Cleveland was to have a community police commission. We wanted to make sure that the community had a voice in this process.
We are a tool that needs to be leveraged by community. We are a tool that needs to be helped by community, because we will be putting forth recommendations in consultation and dialogue with the mayor and city council. And we're going to sit down and we're going to have the hard conversations, and they're going to dialogue with us.
The Community Police Commission offers an opportunity for folks who represent different diverse communities, African Americans, people of color, English as a second language, LGBTQ. It's just to really bring a diversity of issues to the table, a diversity of perspectives, and come up with something that we think is going to move the dial on community police relations.
She lost her life. An innocent person who has never been involved with the police lost her life because an officer just overdid it. He overdid it, and he knew better, but he didn't care because he knew that there would be no punishment after that. These officers were put on restricted desk duty after my sister was killed. They're still working. We saw how Timothy Loman and Frank Grimbeck operated that police-issued vehicle that they were driving when they rode up on my cousin at that gazebo, less than 100 feet from where we are right now. So my question is, how do you plan on holding these officers accountable when the head, which is the prosecutor, when the prosecutor himself is biased? So if we want to talk about transparency and accountability, I think it starts with the bias-free policing, and the prosecutor is at the head of the table.
The most powerful person is always the prosecutor, because he's the only one that can put you in jail. The prosecutor in any county is the most powerful person, and they know it.
All use of deadly force cases by police in Coward County will be reviewed and decided by the grand jury.
The grand jury process is flawed throughout the United States. We're the only country that still uses the grand jury process. Unless you have public outcry about a flawed criminal justice system, it's not going to be responsive and change.
McGinty surprisingly candid, telling us the investigation is still open and he will make a recommendation to the grand jury once all the evidence comes in.
I would like for him to step down and allow an independent prosecutor to take over Tamir Rice's case.
Yeah! Samaria Rice's attorney and Samaria Rice herself, they have said a special prosecutor should take over. Will you step aside?
Well, isn't that interesting? They waited until they didn't like the reports they received. They're very interesting people. Let me just leave it at that. And they have their own economic motives.
You could throw money in people's face all day long. Nobody wants your money. You know, I thought it was all over. And then I seen Trayvon. And then I seen Michael Brown, Eric Garner, John Crawford. Then I seen me. I just don't believe it. I was just raising my kids. I was in the middle of cooking lasagna, and I got a knock at the door. I think that this system needs to be dismantled and rebuilt. We will get justice for our children. Believe that. They made me a leader. I didn't ask to be a leader. They made me a leader when they killed my son. I don't care about no money in the world. I don't care about none of that. All I need is an indictment and conviction. Maybe you can get me to be quiet if you do that. But if you ain't gonna do that, you just gonna have to deal with it. I think that's what every mother wants, to ease the pain just a little bit.
This last year, we have tried to mend our broken hearts. This year without Tamir has left my family questioning the system. We are still looking for answers.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out and to continue to support Justice for Tamir. I thank you guys for all the warm love and thoughts as well. I'm fighting for justice for all our children. Thank you.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I probably done 900 homes and I've never found a body yet. I'm not wanting to either. Yeah, we've pushed people out before. They'll go to the next house, then you push them out. Go to the next house. Honestly, we used to think we're in Baghdad. They've been old, they've been abandoned. They've got to come down. But yeah, we'll chase the crackheads, we'll chasing our street. We've done, I think this will be our 4th one on this street.
When I grew up in that area, I mean, it was beautiful. Now you go over there and you think you're walking through little Iraq. Now you fearful walking through the daytime, you know, let alone at night.
Cleveland is a battleground. People are tired. They're just barely surviving.
they're like punched in the gut. Like we are punched in the gut like every day.
It's like 30 or 40 or 50 years of decline in these neighborhoods and in these communities. Cleveland has been losing population for 40 years straight. The city of Cleveland was more than 1 million people. Now it's 350,000. In the mid-90s into 2008, 2009, 2010, in Ohio, more than 100,000 people a year were losing their homes. And neighborhoods like this, you're talking about 25, 50, 75% of the homes on the block getting foreclosed on. The wealth stripping that's happened has just been devastating, in particular for communities of color that literally like lost 40 or 50 years of gains in wealth within 4 or 5 years of the foreclosure crisis.
Cleveland is the most segregated city in the country, and most Black folks live on the east side.
You know, I was born on East 58th, in between Superior and St. Clair, and I remember people I grew up with never even been over the bridge.
Right.
Right? They never passed Tower City.
That's
to
right.
go on the west
That's
side of
right.
town, and so.
Or the other way, both ways. Like, yeah, go.
If you talk about Cleveland doing bad, their neighborhoods in Cleveland are doing great. Absolutely great. But they're white neighborhoods. The focus is not on poverty.
We lived in a predominantly African-American community with all these vacant and abandoned properties, with boarded up properties, a drug house next door, and all this stuff going on. Meanwhile, University Circle is like less than a mile away, maybe a 10-minute walk where they have Case Western Reserve, where they have Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital, where they got the Art Museum.
I feel like the setup of Cleveland is very intentional. Like, the fact that you cannot get places easily, you can't get from one side to the other easily, is very intentional. It's purposely set up so that people are economically, racially divided.
You can't have an authentic conversation about today without looking at the historical nature of what led people to where they are today. A historical event that took place here in Cleveland were the Huff Riots. And it's 50 years ago that those took place.
In the early 60s, there was a great influx of blacks into what had been a working class white community. Puff, it was too dense, and the mood of the country was such, it didn't take much for that spark to start an uprising.
These were communities that had Black business owners. These were communities that had, good education systems, committed families, and they were shattered. People don't wake up in poverty. There are conditions that have led them there. Many times, particularly for the city of Cleveland, as segregated as it is, a lot of that has to rest upon race and racism.
After the uprising, the community languished. There was no development, no building, just a bunch of empty lots. So what has to happen at this point is that the residents of Huff have to come together in an intelligent, cohesive way and say what we want the next 50 years to be about. A lot of people come to Huff and focus on how bad it was. We like to focus on how good it's become. This used to be an apartment building that was a drug den. Now it's a beautiful vineyard. These are the Frontenac. These are a red grape from Wisconsin that's bred to be cold hardy. Each vine will produce about, enough grapes for 10 bottles of wine. Our goal is when people think of Huff, we want them to think of Chateau Huff, our vineyard, and not the Huff Riots.
One of the things that I believe is that if I participated in the revitalization of this community, that it can happen. And so now I'm all in. I sort of felt divinely led to this house back in 2007. About 100 years old, right here in East Cleveland. And, this was my commitment, my anchor to make me stay true to what I felt I was called to do in this community, which is help rebuild it. Oh, well, where the kids at?
Well, Gabriel is with the next door neighbor. And Naomi is...
Before I ended up buying this house, I was literally, I didn't have a place to stay for about 7 months. People at my job knew I was homeless. I would work late and sleep on the steel table at the machine shop. I lived out of my Jeep, but I decided I wanted to be in East Cleveland. Before this house was even up for sale, I said, man, that's a beautiful house. Some nights I would just park my Jeep up there and I would come and just like fall asleep right on the porch, just laid out like this. And then I began to work to build my credit up. In 7 months, I saved enough to buy the house. I even cashed in my 401k. I'm crazy enough to believe that we can actually change the morale and change the perception and make this actually a viable place to live. And I think that it only happens when people actually fight for it.
Cleveland is a divided city. This didn't happen overnight, and it ain't gonna cure overnight. Our overall model is turning neighborhoods into communities. And so we go door to door to each house, find out what they need and what they want to learn about.
And what do you feel the community needs to do to improve? You feel we need better services, better housing, safety, all of the above?
Well, you know. And it's a process that I felt need to happen to create a healing, to be able to create hope where there's so much despair. Because the people that I talk to every day is traumatized.
Would you be objective if police were walking the streets more, or would you be supportive of that?
I'm being supportive of that. Okay. Because I very seldom see them.
And so we started our beautification project. Let's put flowers on the light poles and let's paint the garbage cans beautiful images, heritage images. Because if we claim it, then we have a better posture in telling those to invest in it. But if we can't make it safe, then how can we encourage somebody to come in and invest? There are a lot of things that we can do as citizens before we even enlist the help of councilmen and city government and foundations, like cleaning up the trash, like pooling together the resources and the skill sets we have to be able to make an environment worth living in.
Well, I've been here, and I've seen it decline.
So you've seen it transform, because you were here when
I've seen it fall apart, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it was beautiful. It had everything, furniture store, everything, doctor's office, everything you needed was right here. You didn't have to go downtown for shoes, nothing. It was really awesome.
It's going down a lot.
In what way?
Crime.
Crime.
And housing.
And housing.
The problem is that you don't know your neighbors. The older people are moved out and young people are moving in, and you have no idea who they are.
What happened with a lot of these foreclosures is that, you know, if you had money, you could buy 10 houses for $50,000. Home ownership essentially has been decimated. And then a lot of people, of course, the same people who are renting are people who are foreclosed on themselves. The impact that that has on all of these communities is a shrinking tax base, so it exponentially builds pressure on communities and neighborhoods and families to try to just stay stable in any shape or form.
So the way cities are funded, income tax, property tax, those are the basic mechanisms. The city doesn't generate enough money to provide basic city services. It really shows the character of this country when we can still have an American city with poor infrastructure, mass unemployment, large number of children living in poverty, all these different disparities, and we haven't figured out how to deal with it yet. With all the things that we have available to us, as far as technology, as far as resources, as far as really understanding how people in social environments thrive, and we're still dealing with these issues. No American city should be this distressed. No American city should be this distressed.
We do roughly 6 houses a week, minimum 6 houses, and we work 12 months out of the year. Winter, we don't stop. There's more demo needed than there is contractors. There's not enough contractors to do all the work.
The legacy of struggle and resistance in this city lingers. Folks know about the Huff Riots. Folks know about the West and East Divide and what that means.
And you will hear just neighborhood people talking about it, but they don't feel like they can change anything.
Yeah,
they're like,
when something that traumatic is happening to you all the time, you just like internalize it as a normal part of your everyday routine.
Absolutely.
To be statistically the most distressed, segregated city in the country,
If anywhere, Cleveland is the place where power building organizing needs to happen.
We cannot have a healthy democracy without a healthy middle of the country. Cities like Cleveland have to be able to rebuild and thrive. We cannot have an economy that's just based on the East Coast and the West Coast. If we can't figure out what to do with Cleveland and how we reinvent core cities that have been so instrumental in building this country, you know, the implications are huge for the country, for the economy, for our democracy.
It's been a year now, but does it bring up any emotions for you as you walk by there?
It's 1 year since Tamir has been gone. We haven't seen no justice. So it's very hard to walk past that spot knowing that that's where Tamir took his last breath. And, you know, just being constantly reminded and seeing his death play out over and over again in the media. It's hard. The community is asking for an indictment. They are asking for an arrest of these officers. I would just hope that they do the right thing.
We've had some very unfortunate social injustices happen in Cleveland. I talked to a lot of different organizing groups, and they was talking about getting the local people involved because the people have been so disconnected from the organizing that, you know, they just didn't feel like it actually applied to them, and I disagree. It's actually about each and every one of us trying to collectively come together to make the change in which we wanted to see. And if we don't win, we all lose. I was probably about 4 years old, and I never forget, a guy got killed, and I was being watched by my grandmother, and she allowed me to go down there and just stand with everybody and see this dead body on the street. This 12 noon. As a kid, I had a nightmare for 6 months, but these were common in the environments in which I grew up in. And so I'm like, wow, there's so many other things that I could have been exposed to instead of, you know, the gun violence. The first half of my life, I thought that it was a badge of honor to prove that I wasn't scared to die for this or to die for that, because I always felt like I was at war. I was lucky to only do 10 years. There were situations I was involved in that could have gave me the rest of my life. 4 years into the penitentiary, and it was a turning point for me. I started reading and studying. It opened so many doors. It made me question things that I never questioned. And so when I came out, I'm like, hey, I'm ready. Basically, I never liked when people would always judge me from my past. I recall hearing Pastor Selassie saying recently at church, I might have done that, but I am not that. We can transform ourselves and create the world around us to be what we desire to not only live in, but leave behind. I'm sitting at the bar, listening to jazz, and the guy sitting next to me vaguely looked familiar. I said, man, you the cop that arrested me. And it was surreal. He was the officer that captured me. And him and his partner, I'll never forget them saying this to me. They was like, Fred, we're not gonna call in your arrest because it's a unit that has jurisdiction over you. If we call in, they can come get you and take you from us. And they might say you grabbed the gun or whatever because they want to kill you.
We had some other entities that said they wanted to hurt Fred. But me and my partners always had a thing, treat people decent. And if you didn't do anything to us, we're not gonna do anything to you. We're not telling anybody we got you until we get you downtown, get you booked in. That's my job, get them down there, you know?
Was it a good thing that you caught me instead of them other units?
Just depends. It could have been. you know.
If he was a cop that chose to use excessive force over just doing his job, then I might not be alive, like so many others. And so I said, you allowed me to make a distinction between good cops and bad cops.
It's a lot going on right now in Cleveland. There have been some incidents involving police officers that's not right. But they know that things got to change. The mayor has said that it has to change. The Department of Justice said it has to change. The unions know it has to change. The police officers themselves know it has to change. Until the good officers start saying, we're not going to tolerate these bad officers continuing their bad behavior, it's going to hurt all police officers. Community policing closes the gap. It brings the community and the police together. If we don't do this together, it's not going to work. It can't be the police got to solve it all. It can't be the community got to solve it all. They have to do it together.
We can't be individuals in this. We have to see one another as human beings that have a shared challenge.
Look at it. I got a plan to help turn neighborhoods into communities. And people play with that word, but a neighborhood is not a community, and there's reasons why it's not. How did these mattresses even get here? Like mattresses in the field. That ain't a community. You don't have mattresses in the field, in a community. You don't not know who the seniors are in a community. Who's responsible for this? Grass so high, could be a dead body back there. We don't even know because the grass so high. That's what you get in the neighborhood. That's a neighborhood. But we gonna change it. It's only two types of power, man. Money and people. We ain't got no money, so we gotta organize the people.
How criminal justice reform and just a critical examination of the criminal justice system, how that cannot be at the forefront of the debate at a national level is beyond me. These are the types of things I think really are at the heart of our democracy, because every time you see Tamir Rice, every time you see these instances of 137 bullets, I mean, these are things that are tearing at the very foundation of what we're supposed to believe as, you know, as a part of this country.
We've woken this sleeping giant that has been disenchanted, not only with the system by and large. So now that we are on the cusp of something big, what do? What is our next step?
We will sit in until we can eat in any corner in the United States.
We want our freedom, and we want it now. Every movement of making our country better in terms of inclusion has always been civil disruption, whether we're talking about the civil rights movement or even the women's suffrage movement. We're outside of the power structure, but at the same time, we still have power because we still have people.
Joseph, when they done, we're gonna walk over. Hi, I'm Elle. Yeah. Yes, I've been coordinating the hotel and all of the things. How was y'all drive?
I think just from an organizing perspective, there's a lack of organizing around political and social justice issues in the Midwest. But then the catalyst for us as Ohioans was John Crawford.
A grand jury has declined to indict a white police officer who shot and killed a 22-year-old African-American man named John Crawford.
Trying to work with the Beaver Creek Police Department as they continue their crusade for justice for John Crawford III.
We started to see Black communities galvanizing and the connections to Cleveland with the murder of Tanisha Anderson and Tamir Rice. That's when conversations started really circulating.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting justice for Tamir. I encourage everyone to get out and get involved in the movement. Thank you for coming out.
In order for us to have any chance at winning or defining what winning looks like, we must have a movement. And so we wanted to provide a venue and a space for those families to provide some insight and perspective to what it's like to experience the 1-year anniversary of a child murdered.
It has been 1 year since my cousin was murdered, and there has been no arrest, no charges, and no indictment of the officers that murdered him. I would think in a predominantly black area that the conversation of topic would be this child, and it's not. You know, in the beginning, when Tamir first was murdered, you know, we saw people out in the street, they were marching, they were shutting down the freeway, and then it dissipated.
We come back into the same space and we like, well, they killed somebody else, y'all. And now we're at a place in the movement, to be very frank, where folks are tired because we've created a whole movement that is centered around death. Action has to happen. Like, direct action has to happen.
8 months after my cousin was murdered, we turned in a petition with 63,000 signatures asking for Magenti to issue an arrest of the officers that killed Tamir Rice. Today, I'm here to turn in a petition with 200,000 signatures asking him to step down and appoint a special prosecutor in Tamir's case. For the past year, a family, a community has demanded more from Prosecutor McGinty and the officers responsible for pulling the trigger. It is an embarrassment that the prosecutor is not acting in the best interest of the people and of a child's life.
Where's he at?
I would like to speak with him.
I don't think he's going to be available this afternoon.
He wasn't
You
available.
don't think? Can you find out?
When will he be available?
You said you didn't
Not
think.
sure. Well, he's in a court hearing right now, and he has meetings this afternoon.
Is he aware that the petitions have been delivered for him to recuse himself?
What would you do if it was your 12-year-old? How would you feel?
I'm sure I'd feel terrible. We'd all feel terrible. Like, we feel terrible about what happened to Tamir Rice.
Admit that you're doing nothing. Is Magenti going to advocate for charges against these officers to the grand jury?
What the prosecutor has said is that when the investigation is
I heard what he
complete,
said. My question was, is he going to advocate for
We've not
charges
made
against the officers that murdered my cousin?
happy to take your petitions. That's all we can do at this point, ma'am.
Do you feel terrible?
Would the person accountable be in a jail?
New information tonight on the shooting death of a 12-year-old boy, Tamir Rice.
Today, we learned the officers involved will not face charges.
An Ohio grand jury decided not to return an indictment in the 2014 police shooting death of 12-year-old Tamir Rice.
Based on the evidence they heard and the law as it applies to police use of deadly force, the grand jury declined to bring criminal charges against Cleveland police officers Timothy Lohman and Frank Garnbeck. That was also my recommendation, and that of our office, after reviewing the investigation and the law. It is now indisputable that Tamir was drawing his gun from his waist as the police slid toward him and Officer Lohman exited the car.
Cleveland has placed a new standard on our children. It is not Tamir Rice's fault that he was not given an ample opportunity to even comply.
In Cleveland, there is a lot to navigate that is unspoken and unamplified. a series over here of images that are crime scenes. You know, trans-identified or gender-variant people that were murdered. And that these are the crime scenes, essentially. Like, these are, you know, satellite images where these people were murdered. So, for example, in this one, their father murdered them, stabbed them to death.
To think that someone's own father murdered them, like, what that reflects.
Yeah.
Like, how much hatred is embedded in folks from the very people that, like, gave them life.
If there was an equal outcry for the death of a trans person as there would be for a cis person, you know, the conversation would look a lot different. The voices in the conversations would look a lot different. The stories would read a lot different. We have to show and highlight what love looks like.
Yeah, because love looks like this art. Love looks like you. It looks like us being able to be in this space collectively together. It looks like Cleveland.
They're not hashtagging the 3 trans women of color who were murdered within the last 2 weeks. No one's talking about that. Why isn't that? Why is that not the case? It's because those lives are not on our radar. I mean, they should be. If we're talking about people who are being killed by a broken system, we need to talk about all of them. Trans women of color, their voice in the movement is being snuffed out quicker than anyone else's, and so theirs is the one that needs to be most representative.
The work is not over, and the work requires the whole community. We have to stand with each other and support each other. We can't erase each other. I've been involved in the work for a number of years in multiple capacities, from, you know, starting off in canvassing to, you know, like helping lead campaign initiatives. However, in 2012, when CC Dove got murdered, was a real wake-up call for me. CC Dove was a young trans woman in Cleveland, young black trans woman who was brutally murdered and dumped in a pond, and even after all of that, still humiliated publicly in a paper. The headline was "Oddly Dressed Man Found Dead in Pond." There was that denial. There was that shame. This person had a name. Like, someone find out her name.
According to GetEqual.org, since January, 19 trans women have been murdered. 13 of them were black.
2 people found murdered on Cleveland's west side just days and miles apart.
Brittany Sturgis, another transgender person, was found shot to death in a car.
32-year-old Brandy Bledsoe, and her death was ruled a suspected homicide.
They're the most likely to be arrested for doing survival sex work. They're the most likely to be put in a position where they have to do survival sex work. They're more likely to be murdered by a father, a brother, a lover.
That 35 is the life expectancy for trans women of color. I'll be 31 this year. I've never been more cautious of a number ever before in my life.
There is an issue with lack of visibility of trans people, definitely in Cleveland. And I think that does kill people, literally. That has happened. When I first came to Cleveland in 2006, I didn't have to divulge my trans identity because no one questioned it. I don't think that I've ever been more aware of how much of a liability it is to be a black male in America than when I transitioned. I'm used to just entering into conversations with whoever I feel like it, or talking to people on the street and things like this. It was much easier. It was much easier when I was perceived as being a black female than now. Just very strange, just that societal hardwiring of black men are dangerous.
We need to start having even larger conversations around community safety, around, you know, police relations, around, you know, your legal rights as a trans or gender variant person. With increased visibility comes increased vulnerability.
An Ohio grand jury has decided of 12-year-old African-American boy Tamir Rice. Elle Hearns is with Black Lives Matter Cleveland. What are you demanding in Black Lives Matter?
For the immediate firing of the officers, it's really an insult that officers that are responsible for the murder of a child still are actively employed. There's this blueprint, if you will, of what activism looks like or who's considered an activist. And so I tell everyone that every day that I wake up, that is an act, right? Like that is an activist moment. Every day that I go outside and interact with people that might try to kill me. Even when I interact with those people I allow in my home, they might try to kill me. So I'm constantly protesting. Good morning. How are you? Hi. Good morning. Within this moment, it's super important because we've seen movements in the past leave folks out. It's the only way for us to truly win is if we collectively are unified. And I think that that's something that movements have lacked in the past, is a true unity amongst people. We can't propel anything forward if it's just one of us. Everyone has to do a part.
I thought it was very important to do some intimate engaging with the organizers as well as other groups to see how we really create the synergy that's needed to fight for this social justice.
We don't want to identify and say who the enemy is. It's white people. And until you bear witness to who your enemy is, you can't move forward.
To examine the oppression and say it's black or white or this versus that is a disservice to what we're here for, because I believe the common goal is to eliminate oppression for everybody, black or white or poor. People as well, so I welcome everybody who's feeling oppressed in their everyday life.
I'm not judging nobody for whatever their sexual activity is, but the creator that I believe in says man and woman.
I'm really confused because if we're talking about working together and you're condemning somebody for the way that they are, that makes no sense.
The world is changing. The world is changing, and it's changing fast. And so the dinosaur, the old guard, they either gonna recalibrate their way of thinking this thing through, or they're gonna be voiceless.
It is not just about men. Women are not affected as just mothers of someone. It's gonna work from a black woman, talking about what the struggle of a black woman is, from LGBTQ community that are black. We need all of these folks in this room.
I don't deal with what I consider backwardness to God, and if it don't make a baby, it's backward. Sex is just for procreation.
It's a fact and it's the truth.
It's a fact and it's a truth based on your perspective of it. Because you have to allow for others.
No, I don't.
Well, okay, well then we agree to disagree.
I'm not gonna have you take what I said and put it like you want it. That's our problem.
Social justice is starting to carry a new face. And it's coming in many different colors, many different philosophies, many different orientations.
There's a saying that when the rain falls, it doesn't fall on one housetop. And I truly believe that, like what is happening in Cleveland, this is something that is happening in many different places across the country. And we have to continue to build our own personal, political, social, economic power to change that.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
From whatever entry point you're coming in, if you're coming in as an individual organizer, activist, protester, or you're with an established organization, if you are doing this work, you're part of this movement, we are very intentional about centering our whole selves and our whole community. And that means putting folks who are on the margins of our marginalized selves in the center.
All Black Lives Matter! And we're in this struggle together. Trans people, queer people, gay people, that fought for the liberation of Black people.
We are in a new day. We can't continue to blindly follow leadership that feels familiar because it leads us into these same spots.
The kicker is we're not doing it for bravery. Every trans person necessarily isn't out there to be the shoulder bearer and a front runner and a symbol of their movement, It's just people trying to live their life. It's a matter of getting other people to recognize other people as people.
You can see me, and so to know that there are people like you who are struggling like you, who have struggled like you, who might live right down the street. That is how community is built.
I think that the old guard, they need to acknowledge the fact that there's a new voice coming.
Communities are going to have to start to come together and start to work together. And it shouldn't take a tragedy to bring that out of you. It shouldn't take the loss of others to happen to realize this. Community isn't built on the cover of magazines. Community is built in these streets of Cleveland.
The state must be able to show that the officers acted outside the constitutional boundaries. It would be unresponsible and unreasonable if the law required a police officer to wait and see if the gun was real.
Prosecutor McGinty didn't advocate for me, and he covered up for the officers. He didn't do anything.
The Cleveland Police Department is now responding to a wrongful death lawsuit by blaming a 12-year-old boy for his own death.
Tamir would pull the gun in and out of his pants like robbers do.
It is likely that Tamir, whose size made him look much older and who had been warned that his pellet gun might get him into trouble that day.
He made it seem like Tamir caused his own death, and it's kind of weird and strange how they do it, but it's terrible.
I think it was a tragic mistake by the young boy to not drop the gun. Obviously, people felt threatened by him. They called the police over it. The police show up, and look, just because someone's 12 years old doesn't mean that they can't do harm.
Ben talks about this kid being their expectation of black bodies is in public space is different than their expectation of white bodies. And as a consequence of that, black people get killed for being young, black, and outside.
I have kids too. They know how to respect the law. They know what to do when a police officer comes up to them. I think the nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it, and just stop.
This is not supposed to be like that. We're all human beings. It's ridiculous. You have to be up here to see it with your own eyes in Cleveland.
The music got us sleep, brother. Create zombies and plus make us sheeps, brother. I'm happy the Cavs won the title this year, but no jail time for murderers up to me.
I grew up between Kinsman and Imperial, and when I look at it today, I'm devastated. We need a championship and not an athletic one. But I love Cleveland. That's why I'm still actually here. I do love this city. Cleveland people are trying. But to some point, you begin to get discouraged when you don't see some change with Tamir Rice. And the fact that the officers weren't immediately fired. They felt like this city wasn't outraged enough. We're not doing anything to use our voting power to make sure we have legislators and to change.
Well, among the local races that has drawn considerable interest on this election day is the race for the Cuyahoga County prosecutor. Tim McGinty is hoping to keep his position in spite of criticism over several very high-profile cases.
How y'all doing? You got 5 minutes? We're with Ohio Against Hate. And so we're just asking folks to fill out a voter pledge card. Are you registered to vote? Yeah. Oh, good. Give them one of the clipboards they write on. Oh, good. So I'm excited that folks are like, yes, let me sign.
Man, look, anybody.
Hi, brothers. How are you? Hey, everybody. I got a quick question for you. Did you vote this last March? How many of y'all voted? Can I see your hands? Did you vote in March?
I only participate in politics.
Ooh, really? Why?
I don't believe in it.
You don't believe in it? Don't think you can make a difference? Don't think it makes a difference?
Politics are corrupt, and I
believe it's corrupt?
I believe that a lot of times we can put our heart and soul into it and believe that, you know, we trying to get the right person in office, and the same thing continues to happen. I've been down here my whole life, and I've seen no change.
Do I understand today some of these young people saying that they don't vote Yeah, I get it, because you can't connect the dots right away. And then when you see a community in the same situation, you're like, I'm not clear what this voting thing is really doing to move it into a different light.
Well, what if I share some numbers? I shared these with Brother Art about East Cleveland. You know, your population is 17,843 people. 17,843 people. That's a lot of people, right? But there's only 12,264 people registered. Now, when we talk about people that voted this last primary, only 3,178 people showed up to vote. So when you talk about we keep getting the same people in, and look how many people voted. I mean, think about that. That's pretty real.
Yeah.
So if you got failed leadership, how can you afford not to vote? You all know you a boss. They're not doing what they say they're gonna do. Just fire them. You get a group of people, you say, look, they didn't do blah, 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 and you do just what I just did, and you go to the polls, you just take them out. And you start paying their paycheck, because right now they getting a paycheck, but they not, you just said, doing right by the community. Right. So why would you keep tolerating that?
What y'all doing? My brother's sister, my sister.
A lot of people feel real powerless, right?
Yeah.
When they think about the voting process, things ain't gonna change. But that local councilman or that local state representative, we can get him.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can get her, we can keep them in check. And I think when we start mapping the argument out like that, it gives a person a better perspective.
Your bacon is done.
All right. If we can find the system that's been affecting us all in such a negative way could be challenged with us all coming together. Black, white, brown, transgender, whatever the case may be, we need numbers.
Tamir was a loving child. He was the youngest of 4. Tamir and my daughter are actually the same age. They were born 7 days apart. So that tells you about the closeness in my family, seeing justice for these lives that have been lost and taken away from us. These are people that we can take out of office if we use our voice and the power of our vote.
People are paying attention to McGinty. He's a stain on the city of Cleveland. He's a stain on the state of Ohio.
That's right.
And if we don't continue to amplify the stain and the mess that he continues to make, we'll be back here next year. And it'll be somebody else's baby.
How we're going to use our collective vote to hold people accountable who say they're going to do things for our communities. How do we utilize this weekend to long-term target Prosecutor McGinty as like the root cause of the mess that we are seeing?
Hands up!
3 weeks out from our March primary, the Democratic race for Cuyahoga County prosecutor is heating up. It is a race that puts incumbent Tim McGinty against former Cleveland Councilman Mike O'Malley.
McGinty, gotcha! Go!
It's going to take all of us to keep this message in the eyes of the political figures and let them know that we are watching them and our vote will matter in the next election.
So we are asking people to rally at the polls and vote McGinty out of office.
No justice has been felt in this city.
The truth of the matter is, the prosecutor can do the right thing before it goes anywhere else once he or she gets the report. It's a new day. We gonna do it a new way. We ain't going nowhere. And we say no more. No more. No more. That's the statement that we've come.
Prosecutor McGinty, he blankly lied to my face and told me he was gonna do everything he can and, give me a fair trial. And if them officers didn't talk, he was gonna put them in jail until they talk and all this old dead promises he made me. It's like they did a psychological mind game, but I wasn't for it though. No. He's a despicable man. The people in Cleveland need to wake up. They need to wake up because they need to know if you wake up, you'll be powerful.
When justice is off balance, Baton Rouge, Milwaukee, and Dallas. Towards people of color, so many hearts callous. Malcolm told us either the bullet or the ballot.
So if you were born in a two-parent household, take a step forward. If you were born in a single-parent household, take a step back.
There's 133,376 registered voters in Cleveland. 30,000 came out to vote. 102. Now with 102,000, if we could get them to vote, we can get something done.
Sir, can I sign you up to vote? Can I register you to vote?
If you were in a two-car family, take a step forward. If you were not in a one or two-car family, take a step back.
The local councilman, state rep, the people that go around here, making $70,000, $80,000, that's controlling government, federal or state funding. So that's when we have to understand, hold power accountable.
We all started right here on the same line, right? But our opportunity moved us forward or back. But if you can see, if you look up and down your row, it's not just people your same age in your row. It's not just people your same gender, your same race. This is what you're gonna see in the field. This is what you're gonna experience. We're gonna be going east and west in Cleveland, so we're gonna be dealing with people from all different backgrounds. We're not just doing voter registration, we are creating voters. It's all well and good to register 150,000 people across the state of Ohio, but it means absolutely nothing if they do not go out and vote.
And make sure you go vote. All right. Okay, I ain't doing this for nothing. Can I register anybody to vote? I'm registering people to vote. Come on, we can get you. And you're gonna be proud to vote for the first time.
There are many ways to create change in communities. But what we are doing and what we are building a vehicle for is for organizing. The last presidential election in Ohio was decided by 160,000 votes. We have just passed this week 100,000 voter registrations for Ohio.
I've always felt like things could change, there's no stone that everything is set in. Systematically, we're told to believe that we're powerless. It's not the truth. And it's really exciting to see people use their voting power to make a statement, especially in Cleveland, because winning politically is just not something that folks are used to.
This is a very difficult race, my brothers and sisters. We have two loyal Democrats running for this office. Tim McGinney did not go to charm school. He's not a bat slapper or a glad-hander. We all know that. He operates in a different manner. We can talk about all the personality issues we want. At the end of the day, we need a prosecutor that's going to be fair.
I put my whole heart and soul into fulfilling my responsibilities. As your incumbent Democrat, I ask for your support. Let's get right to the real issue tonight. Is our county going to go back, or is our county going to have a professional prosecutor's office?
He was consistent in his disrespect and dereliction of duty. It was clear that he worked with and for the police union and the police department. That wasn't what we assigned him to do.
If we really want to undo it, we have to vote to change. We just have to. It's about control. And if you want control to change, then you have to be a part of the process. We have got to pick better leaders.
In Ohio, might be something to suggest at the next rally.
It's 7:30, so you know the polls close at 7:30. 19 Action News. Okay, let's see what Cleveland 19 got. All right, so none of the results are in yet. I'm just going to watch them off for the rest of the night.
All I know is it's a heck of a race, because he got a lot of people against him. A lot of things against him. You know, because just some things just wasn't right.
A political bombshell. Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Tim McGinty loses his re-election bid to Michael O'Malley.
Michael O'Malley wins this one by double digits in a race that was heavily concentrated on the use of deadly force.
But a majority of voters decided McGinty was guilty of making the wrong choices in high-profile cases and being too difficult to get along with.
Well, you know, the old saying, all politics is local. And, you know, people like to say that, you know, black people only come out for presidential elections. But we showed with McGinty that that's clearly not the case.
We may not have rioted and did all of those things that other cities did when the situations happened with 137 shots in Tamir, but we got our prosecutor out. That's what you can do.
The communities that supported McGinty, they was predominantly white. And the ones that supported O'Malley was predominantly African American. It make all the sense in the world. African Americans are a majority in Cleveland.
And then these people know that you're dead serious.
And that should be very scary to the system of oppression, because if we continue to do this, things will change.
So together, we the people, we put the people in office that we need that can help all of us.
Just like that.
It's really no town like Cleveland. Honestly, for the longest time, I had been doing nothing but trying to get away from.
It's something that keeps us in the city. It's like, we need to be here.
Yeah.
You know, in this moment.
Yeah.
I had to realize that I'm a part of a long legacy of folks who have been resilient in the city. From the Huff riots to Glenville riots to electing the first black mayor of a major metropolitan city.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, I'm a part of that legacy.
Yeah, I mean, the city is a catalyst for change. I believe if I wasn't in Cleveland, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I have done.
That's real. It's time for Cleveland to be put on the map.
Absolutely. You know, we matter more than you know, just election season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the prettiest girl at prom every 4 years.
Yeah.
That's Ohio.
Getting a new prosecutor, you know, we won a battle, but we didn't win the war. The war would be comprehensive, broad-based criminal justice reform. Having children being able to play in the park and not get killed by police. There's a lot of work to be done. This is a long-distance race. It's not a sprint, you know, so we have to continue to fight for these reforms, making sure that folks who are in elected office understand that it's not going to be business as usual.
A lot of the focus is going to have to shift to changing hearts and minds and not just remedying racism and a broken system through legislation, but really in the way that we think about people of color, how we think about transgender and queer people. That's the next level of real change happening.
I want to show Cleveland that we are better together. All of us. All of us.
We don't give ourselves enough credit here. We always look at the bad things, but there's a lot of good things here. And I keep saying, when we really, really collaborate, that's when we win here even more.
Organized money always bank on the fact that you can't match our dollar, and we can't. But what organized money must realize, and they know, that if you organize people, you will challenge that money.
I would like to be able to change the dynamics in the inner city of Cleveland, because they think that we didn't see what we saw. Who was allowing this to happen in America? That's what I would like to know. Who is allowing the government to get away with a murder and the police terrorizing American citizens? You have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to let the world know.
Let me tell you about some real beef. It seems black lives real cheap. And because of it, I can't get no real sleep. I got some questions on my heart. When they killed Tamir in that park, was it for that toy gun? Or was it because he was dark? So I wanna know. And I ain't talking about that meal flow. I wanna know what the minister gonna say, cause listen, we just waiting for the go. So it's back to back. And I ain't talking about no Drake track. I'm talking about killings of blacks on blacks and how police are killing us back to back. So I'm charged up. Felonies is how they charge us. They supposed to serve and protect, but in reality they just disregard us. You wanna teach your son to nay, you better teach that boy to pray. Because he ending up in jail and Lil Ray just becoming Lil Nay. You see what happened to Freddie Gray? They still trying to break a black man's spine. That bullet to Mike Brown head, they still trying to destroy your black man's mind. They choked the breath out of Brother Gardner. Different places, but it's all intertwined. You know the problem with the black man is that he's black, and that's the black man's crime. Yes. And that's the black man's crime. Yes. And that's the black man's crime. I guess I'm guilty then, cause that's the black man's crime. Bismillah. Black man's crime. While you teach your kids how to whip, you better teach them slavery is still legit. Forget getting the house in that new whip, cause that police gun, that's the new whip. I guess I'm guilty then, cause that's the black man's crime.